Assalamu alaikum. Today we'll be going over the topic of directives and macros in the chapter of assembly language in CS 9618, which is the new syllabus code. It's the new syllabus that we'll be following onwards from 2020. So, what are directives and what are macros, right? So, these two are somewhat essential in terms of understanding how assembly works in the easiest form manner. So let us assume you have an assembly language program, but you need to translate it into machine language in order for it to work, right? So how are you gonna ask your translated program, your assembler, to where do you start? Where do you start the conversion from? Therefore, you need directives, right? So directives are not really program instructions, like they do not affect your code which you're trying to translate, but they do tell your assembler language software that needs to translate the source code. And these are simply instructions that direct the assembler to do something. And then you have those examples that you need to know, and only you need to know what they do. You do not need to know how they do it. You do not need to know how to write code for it, right? So here I've written down two examples and somewhat like stating the start address of the program. So when you know the start address of the program, so you can start translating from there, right? So such as org301. So you start from 301. We do not need to know what this means. You just need to know that we can use directives to state the start address of the program. And then we can also use directives to include additional files. So here I have written an example that include an additional file abc.lib. So that is all you need to know about directives. You do not need to know big chunks of information. You just need to know that these are not specifically program instructions. These are just instructions that guide the assembler to do something, right? So now we move on to something known as macros, right? So let us assume you have this program that you're writing in assembly language, and you need to keep rewriting the same three lines of code over and over again, right? So you are not gonna waste your time doing the same thing over and over again, right? So you could do it in a more concise manner, right? So that is where macros are used. So here I've written the general definition where there may be instructions that need to be executed several times, but these instructions are given a certain name and are called using that name into the program to make it more concise, to make it less of a problem with you managing you writing the same lines over and over again, and then it gets very repetitive, right? So here we have an example, and this is not a specific example. This is just an example to make you understand how macros work. So here we can see there's ABC here, there's ABC here, and there's ABC here. So it keeps on repeating itself, right? So here I have defined a macro. So you define it macro, you write your name here of the macro, and then you write the three lines of codes that were repeating itself, and then you end it with an end macro, right? And then when you are going to use that, so you're going to write the code using the macro that you've just created, right? So my macro, my macro, my macro here replaces the three lines that you kept on repeating in the original code. So this is what macros are. They're like a function, or they're like a small library, so that you can import, or you can just create in your own code and then use it in order to make your code more concise, and so that you do not have to repeat it, or you do not have to repeat the same lines over and over again. It makes your life easier. And here we have a question from the past paper, and I think this is only one of the two questions that have ever come from 2015 in the old syllabus. So we just need to complete the following statements that describe the features of a low-level language, right? You have to complete the statement by writing appropriate terms. Okay, so a dash is a sequence of instructions that are given an identifier. These instructions need to be executed several times. As we just read, and I hope we understood that macros are something that are given a unique identifier, and they are instructions that need to be executed several times. So here we're going to write macro. And a dash is an instruction that tells the assembler to do something. It is not a program instruction. Like we just started off this video with, those are called directives, right? So we're going to write directives. And lastly, the processor's instruction set can be put into several groups. One of these groups is, so there are multiple groups. There are arithmetic operations, there are jump operations. So we're just going to write jump operations here. Jump operations slash instructions. So, and there will be many more videos explaining all these types, so you do not need to worry about them. But today's this video's content was basically focused towards macros and directives, and I hope you guys would have understood what macros are, what directives are. So this is it for this video. I hope you are well confident in what directives and macros are in the chapter of assembly language. Thank you.